to the Silicon Dreams on Radio Zindagi 1550 AM. Joining me in the studio today, I have Jason from Aavegotchi. And Jason, very excited to have you and the cute Aavegotchi brand in our Radio Zindagi studio here today on the Silicon Dreams. Before we move ahead, Jason, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, followed by a quick introduction about Aavegotchi.
Sure. Thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name is Jason DeSimone, and I work on the business development side of Aavegotchi. Aavegotchi is a decentralized gaming protocol. I know it's a lot of words, but essentially the founder vision very early on was to create a gaming studio that was owned by the community and governed by the community. And that's something that we've built over the past 3+ years at this point. So we spent the last few years raising money, and now we're building games, and we're getting very close to launching our own gaming network.
Amazing. Well, before we dive any further, let's first talk about the big words in the room, right? Decentralized gaming platform. That's actually a lot of decentralized might be a word that people don't easily narrate with, but I'm pretty sure a lot of our audience members have heard about terms like decentralized, blockchain, Web3. So before moving any further, let's literally talk about what does it mean to have Web3 brought into gaming. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, so I think it can mean a multitude of things depending on how you want to implement Web3 and blockchain into your gaming ecosystem. And that's something that's really exciting on its own accord, because it does open up all different opportunities for game developers and gamers. And the level to which this technology is implemented into gaming can really vary depending on the appetite of both the studio and the gamers involved. In our case, decentralization really comes down to the governance and ownership of the protocol itself. So in the case of Aavegotchi, all of the assets in the game are actual NFTs that are owned individually by community members. Those assets then translate into voting power that allow the community to vote on initiatives that essentially drive the direction of the project and the protocol overall. So we govern through ownership.
And how does that how is that let's just think about it, right? Like, how is that in contrast to what happens today in the regular world of gaming? Just to put it in perspective, this ownership aspect that you spoke about, how is it different from a company like Electronic Arts, for example, right, launching their own games? How would that stand in contrast to what Aavegotchi is doing?
Yeah, so in a traditional corporate model, you have essentially representatives that make the decisions for the company based on what they believe to be what the community or the market wants. In this case, it's the actual owners, and those owners can have as little of, the equivalent to $20 USD ownership in assets, or they may be what we call a whale and own a ton of assets. However, compared to a traditional stock model, you can actually cast a vote for that one share of stock that you own. So when we're comparing them, I'd say that's kind of the comparison.
Got it. So instead of just getting some common share stocks, right, you're basically getting like the Class A stocks, right, where it comes with the voting power and you are able to vote for the direction of the company. Now, I'm going to assume that most of these users are also gamers themselves, right? So what does that mean to a gamer? Do they get to have more power in how their favorite game shapes up?
Yeah, so I think our project's very interesting because it's really exemplified the different levels to which people can participate. So for some people, maybe they work for one of those big gaming studios, but they're working in some small capacity, or they want to be more involved. Those folks have found a home in Aavegotchi to be able to be a little bit more hands-on with the direction of the overall protocol as well as individual games. But then we have community members that have gone ahead and they've put together a proposal for an entire gaming title, and then they've come and gotten funding from the DAO. In fact, as we go live with our gaming chain, about half the games that are going to be published right off the bat are coming directly from the community. So these are folks that were empowered through their participation in the Aavegotchi ecosystem to go and build a game on their own. And some of those folks will maybe have started an entire new career path through that.
Amazing. So, in essence, to sum it up, when you're talking about bringing Web3 into gaming, you can look at ownership of the actual assets. In reality, whenever, or rather in the corporate model, as you said, in the traditional model, when people buy any assets in the games, it's not true ownership because the assets are not portable, they're not interoperable, right? You
Right.
cannot just take them with you into a different game in general, though even the traditional companies are working towards it, but most of those games are just the games brought forward by the same production company.
Right.
And as you said, even when it comes to governance and ownership and literally even shaping and steering the direction of the game in to benefit the players who actually play the game, that's where Web3 adds a lot of those utility layers, as we'd like to call it. Now, I'm going to talk about one of the things that the regular gamers, they they don't they are not too fond about when it comes to Web3 games. The play to earn or play and earn aspect of Web3 gaming. I would love to hear your take on it. For the audience listening in, the play to earn or play and earn, as we put it, it essentially refers to players being able to spend time playing a game and then earning some tokens, which in the real world have some monetary value because most of these tokens are listed on either a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange. They can go and trade those tokens for USD, USDT, whatever it is, right?
Right.
So a lot of the Web2 gamers have complained that, hey, we look at games a way for us to come and release all our stress accumulated throughout a working day. So I don't want to come off a day of work and then work again to earn. However, there are gamers who are also making a living out of gaming, and this benefits them even more because now instead of just making a living, uh, streaming their games on Twitch, where they still have to give a major cut to Twitch, the company, they can keep more for themselves. Also, instead of participating in tournaments and that being the only way they earn prize money, they can literally make money every time they're playing and winning. So there are people on that one extreme, and then there are people on the other extreme who just want to have, play games, have fun. So how do you balance that act?
Yeah. So I think this is an interesting conversation, but I think maybe there's a greater context to put there. First and foremost, I think it's important to understand why does play to earn exist, right? And I think for the most part, early in this industry, which is where we are, we do need to incentivize players for all different types of reasons. That may be to beta test, that may be to get DAU so you can get further funding.
And what is DAU?
I'm sorry, daily active users, right?
There you go.
So we need to, some of these projects, we need all different types of ways to get people to come on over and play the game and kick the tires on this thing. So play to earn in many ways was incentive to get the people to come on over and participate early on. I do think it's the nature of the internet to feel like what's happening now is happening forever, but I just don't see that being the case. So I think play to earn has its place and it has its function. Additionally, I think, as you mentioned, people can participate with that in whatever layer, like level they want to. If they want to grind out and just, convert their time for money at the end of the day, they can do that. And, the studio is going to be happy because they're going to have that one player on playing 24 hours a day. But I don't think that this is by any means forecasting like the future of crypto gaming in any sense. I think this is very particularly it's a function, it's got a purpose. And I think we'll probably see these types of incentives come in and out of Web3 and crypto gaming for the entirety of its existence, because there's going to be all types of reasons to try to get people into your ecosystem. And what better way than with monetary incentive?
I feel that's a great point because in the past, the only way companies could do that, which is incentivize player, was by spending big dollars in marketing budget.
Right.
And Web3 does really allow you to create an incentive ecosystem where you are not necessarily spending millions to billions of dollars in marketing. Instead, you have a token that is introduced, a token that gains value from the public sentiment. So your token is valuable if the public deem it to be valuable. And by doing that, you are creating a way to incentivize people to come and play. But at the same time, as you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have to be the hard grind, right? It doesn't have to be the way you make a living for yourselves, but you get incentivized while you're playing. And let's just face it, right? Even the traditional games do often have in-game rewards ecosystems, and a lot of the times those rewards you can't cash out, but you can do something fun with those rewards, which is like buy in-game assets. So sometimes you can just get merchandise from your favorite gaming lineup and so on. And Web3 just takes that to another level where you can do all of that. And Aavegotchi had some really amazing merchandise, by the way, guys. I know you guys can't see Jason in the studio, but right now Jason has a little Aavegotchi, a little gotchi on his microphone, and he looks so cute. The symbol for Aavegotchi is a cute little ghost, and you see that little ghosty making his cute little appearance all over their merchandise. So again, this is an excellent way to reward people. Let me just quickly ask you another question, right? You guys have such cool merchandise, etc. How do you think that helps in onboarding people to Web3?
To be totally honest, I can't say that people are opening their first wallet because of our really cool sweaters, even though we have really cool sweaters. But I will say that for brand awareness and creating meaningful identity around the brand, that's very, very important. And that's something that, drew me to the project very early on, and something I'm very passionate about is our brand presence overall. And I think that that more than anything else just shows sensibility, right? So I think any new business, centralized or decentralized, needs to be with the times and to be current. And I think that our merch definitely helps establish us in the light that we like to be presented in.
Awesome. Let me ask you another question too. Do you already have some games? I know you spoke about some new gaming titles that are being launched, but that does come on an L3, and we'll dive onto that in that conversation in like a couple of minutes. But even before getting to that, how did Aavegotchi got to where you are now? Do you guys already have an amazing lineup of games that people loved playing? And is that how you became popular? Also, what was your journey with the funding that you said you guys have raised?
Sure. So a few questions there. First question was,
What about games? Do you already
oh yeah,
have any
so yeah,
games?
we have a handful of games that are currently live that you could play at aavegotchi.com if you go to our game center.
That's Aavegotchi, Aavegotchi.
Yep. And those games, we've got Gotchi Guardians, which is our take on a tower defense model, which is super duper fun, very, very active for a tower defense model. So it's not very passive for a turn-based game. We have Spirit Force Arena, which is our first-person shooter. We just recently released the latest build of that on Base, Coinbase's layer 2, and you can even wager Ghost, our token, in one-on-one duels in that game right now, which is really cool. We also have an awesome dungeon scroller called Dropped, which is really, really fun, very nostalgic. And then there's a series of other games that will be going live very shortly. Mechagotchi, which is our mech FPS, and yeah, so you could play these games live currently, but really the magic's going to happen when our chain goes live, because that's going to connect all of the back end crypto functionality, which is the real exciting part about all of this stuff.
Absolutely. So again, friends, you can go to aavegotchi.com and you can play some of these amazing games. As Jason said, they have the FPS games or first-person shooter games. They are obviously one of the most popular genres of games that are out there. But also, if you want to go and grab some ghost tokens, wager them in games and battle and duel your friends and stuff, you're able to do that too. And these games have been absolutely popular from what I hear, right? Like, can you talk to us a little bit about the reception of these games? What have any testimonials from the gamers, the fun that they have had?
Yeah, so we've been lucky enough to get this game out into the wild at various gaming as well as crypto conventions. So Ethereum Denver, which is a really, really big crypto convention, hosted a blockchain arcade this past year, and we had a presence there for the duration of the entire event, which was over a week, where we had all of our titles live. People were very, very impressed with the just level of gameplay as well as the quality of the game. All of our game directors are established from the traditional gaming world. So although we were born on the blockchain, we knew we needed to go to the pros and to industry vets when it came to developing games.
Absolutely. And blockchain, again, it's just a layer of technology, right? The experience that people have gained in the traditional gaming industry, it's not going to be done away just because now you have a new kid on the block that's blockchain.
Right. And I think to that point, something you've said multiple times, you've talked about how what we're talking about already exists, right, in Web 2 games. So really at the end of the day, this is about making it more efficient and really shifting the value of all of this to the player. Because right now, unfortunately, as it has been in the past, a lot of the value lies with the studio or the centralized entity. So whereas now you can't unload these assets for any kind of currency that has value outside of the gaming ecosystem, if you spend a bunch of time to get a really cool gun, now there's only going to be a limited number of them in the entire game. And if someone wants to use that or own it, they're going to have to buy it or rent it from you. And that's kind of the way that we think it should be. So
Absolutely. I think that is the big push, decentralization push about Web3 that people quite often tend to glaze over. That Web3 is about still as a technology layer, or even when you look at Web3 business models, obviously people have to make money. There are salaries to be paid, right? The world still doesn't just feed itself. You need to pay your bills. However, in Web3, the shift has been from just making the top 0.1% richer to creating models that can benefit the entire ecosystem. And that is what we're talking about here, right? That the players are so invested in the game normally. A lot of the times they perhaps spend more time than even the employees working for a gaming company, right? But then what do they necessarily get in return? Yes, absolutely. They enjoy the game, they have fun. And for professional players, they go and participate in tournaments. But then, as you said, Web3 is actually taking the traditional models and then just enhancing it and decentralizing it or opening it further so that more people can come and eat a piece of the pie as well. So that's absolutely amazing. Now, you spoke briefly about your L3, right? Now, for folks in the audience who are listening to the conversation, you can just think about L2 as a layer. Like most of the blockchains, guys, that you hear about, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all of these chains are L1s, which is they are the base chain, and then people build on top of it. So a new blockchain or a new ledger that is deployed on top of these chains is called an L2. And something that is then deployed on top of an L2 is called an L3. So I know it is a little cumbersome to even really imagine and draw it out, but essentially an L2 is something that's built on top of an existing ecosystem, and most of the times you build it in order to make transactions more efficient, or there would be a reason for that. So I would love to understand what is the reason for Aavegotchi to build their own L3.
sure. So that was a great explanation. And I like to explain, blockchains are networks at the end of the day, right? They're just decentralized networks, or the same way that, people run traditional computing networks. These L2s and L3s are kind of sub networks built on top of the original network that takes advantage of all of that traditional architecture as well as its base currency. In the case of Ethereum, the base currency is ETH, which is a very strong currency in the crypto world. And as you mentioned, we moved to these additional layers for various reasons, some being for the fact that there's less traffic there, which can help with speed of transaction as well as bringing the cost down. As we move into L3s, we can kind of look at these as somewhat private or permission networks, as in the case of what we're doing. So this is now individual projects deciding to have kind of a walled garden network for projects that they're building, or whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, while taking advantage of whatever the base architecture or base currency that is the most desirable for them, depending on what their overall goals are. So for us, we were born on Ethereum. Because you have to pet your gotchis in order to keep their kinship up and take care of them. That requires a contract call, and that becomes very, very expensive on Ethereum.
Absolutely. So just to put it in perspective, guys, again, as Jason said, right, Ethereum, obviously the second most valuable chain that's out there. As of my data right now, its market cap is $412 billion. So, almost a $500 billion big chain, right? And contract calls on that can be as cheap as, sometimes if you're lucky, 50 cents to $1. to even a couple of hundred or even a couple of $1,000, depending on how busy the network is. And obviously, even if you're talking about 50 cents to a dollar for a simple in-game transaction, because within a game, what people fail to see is that besides just the exchange of value, which is where you're buying assets, you could have so many transactions logged on chain, right? For audit, for example, to bring in more transparency. And imagine having to pay $1 for each of that transaction. It gets expensive very quickly. So then what does this L3 do?
Exactly. So very quickly though, I'll get to the L2 if we could. We'll speed straight through it.
Absolutely.
But so in order to interact with your gotchis every day, we needed a solution, and at the time that solution was Polygon, which is L2 off of Ethereum, which is where we lived for quite a while. It would be fractions of a cent for you to pet your gotchi, and that was all good and well. But as Web3 got more popular, that L2 started to become a bit more expensive. So we needed a better solution. The goal was always to build our own L3. The reasons being, number one, we want to take advantage of our Ghost token and put that to work as the gas token. The L3 will allow for that. But additionally, we wanted to publish games that were in line with what the vision was from our community. And in order to do that, we needed to create a permission chain. So this just works for our overall model. And as we're seeing, this is going to become more and more, I believe, the standard for projects. As they want to build out their bigger ecosystem, they're going to want some control over the blockchain that lives on. So these L3 or app chains, I think, are going to be kind of the next big wave in functionality.
Absolutely. And I've seen people building these app chains, side chains, these L3 levels of abstraction, not just in gaming, but in absolutely every single thing that's being built out there, right? Because not only does it give you more control over how transactions operate in that ecosystem, but it also gives you allows you to have cheaper, faster transactions, not worry about the underlying network load, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it also enables the ecosystems to again incentivize player with their own token, and that definitely, it reduces a lot of friction. But the good news for all the listeners, especially if you guys are planning to check out any of the cute Aavegotchi games, is you absolutely do not need to worry about all of these technical intricacies, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this. Like, a lot of the times people have complained about the fact that, hey, just to get onto a Web3 game, there's so much friction. Even before I can sign up, I have to spend like hours trying to figure things out. How is Gotchi working on reducing some of this friction? Because you have onboarded like thousands of users, right? And so how do you get to that? How do you just make gaming more funner and funner? I know that's not a word. But
Yeah. So onboarding has, been a very popular topic of conversation. If you go to any convention, that's what everyone wants to talk about, is how are we going to get the players? It's so complicated. At Aavegotchi, every step of the way, we've taken advantage of whatever tools were out there to make the onboarding process easier. We've seen the opportunity to use social or email login has been something that, that was a big deal. That in the beginning, you couldn't do that. You needed to have a wallet, and that was a huge barrier to entry. But now it's very easy to sign up for our ecosystem by choosing to log in with Google or Facebook. But then you can also do Wallet Connect. So again, I think one thing that we're going to see with all of these products with a crypto backbone is you're going to have different like layers of participation depending on how much you want crypto to be part of your user experience. So, as we move forward with the launch of Gotchi Chain, I think right now our onboarding process is pretty seamless. So I think it will stay pretty similar to what it is now. When someone comes to our site, it feels very similar to if you were going to a Steam or anything else. You can create that account with your Facebook, you can create it with an email, or if you want a Wallet Connect, you can go ahead and do that as well.
Amazing. So you really don't even have to worry about any of the Web3 intricacies or become a pro of it before you become a pro at the game. You can just come in, have fun. Now, another thing that I wanted to touch upon, which is a follow-up from a question that I'd asked earlier, which was, hey, do you have a bunch of games already? Was the second part of the question, which is, how are you guys funding yourselves? You said that you have raised a lot in funding. Where is that funding coming from, and what are the next steps? What are you planning to do with that?
Yeah, so we're a pretty interesting story. We're considered a DAO ICO is how we funded DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And we launched a token in 2020 called Ghost, which is at the center of our ecosystem. It's our governance token. And that token implemented a bonding curve for close to 3 years, or I believe it was close to 3 years. We departed almost a year ago now. It's hard to tell timelines in this world. But over the course of those 3 years, we were able to raise around $37 million. We did all of that through the token sale, and we did not take any VC money over the course of that raise. So we are truly independently funded. The company that I work for, Pixelcraft Studios, who originally launched Aavegotchi, 3/4 of that funding, roughly, I believe, I don't want anyone to get mad at me if my numbers aren't are exact, but about 3/4 of that funding went into the DAO treasury. So the DAO received close to $30 million.
And again, I would just like to tell people that DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, sounds like another big word, but basically it translates into a bunch of smart contracts, as well as, in this case, we still have people who function for the DAO, but there is an extremely high level of transparency. So in the past, when you just have an executive body sitting somewhere in the world, that you had no transparency, no vision whatsoever into what were the decisions that they were making, and that impacted the entire ecosystem. Now DAOs do the same thing, and those decisions are transparent, they are on chain, and also a lot of the community gets to contribute towards those decisions, because typically when the DAO is contemplating something, they will put it out for a vote. And that's what Jason mentioned earlier, that if you have the Ghost token, if you own the assets, you're able to vote. So this is how DAOs function. The community gets to make the decisions. Everybody is aware of that. And this is an amazing story. I'm sorry I cut you short in there, because I wanted people to understand, like, what is a DAO and why is it different? Because from your story, you guys are completely community funded, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, again, some VC money, investors putting in millions of dollars, but you raised it from the community, and now through the DAO treasury, you're putting it back in the community.
Absolutely. And there are DAOs out there where they do the voting and all that, but there's an entity that owns 25% of those tokens that, have a huge impact on voting. And that's not the way that we are quite well distributed for a community funded project. And yeah, one really good example of that is y'all held a wonderful panel and event at, was that at Consensus or is that GDC? Consensus, right. So at Consensus, and you invited me to speak, which was lovely. And we were able to we brought some merch, and the gentleman that was there was from our DAO. They had put up an initiative last year to get funded every quarter to come support me at live events. So that was a really good example of how a grassroots organization can come together, have an idea, put it up for a vote, get funded, and then turn that funding into action almost immediately.
And the results are also, again, transparent, because in order to get further milestones funded, you have to prove that you have delivered the previous milestones.
Right.
So that's amazing. All right, we are at the end of our show. And Jason, thank you so much for joining us. Before we part ways, though, is there anything you want to leave our audience with, a call to action? Do you want them to come and check out Aavegotchi? Anything that you want to communicate to our audience before we sign off on the Silicon Dreams?
Yeah, absolutely. I highly suggest everybody goes to aavegotchi.com, AAVEGOTCHI, and create a player profile. We're still early, but create a player profile there, and you can already access some of the games, but our profile system is going to be something that carries across all Web3 titles, and I think that's going to be super beneficial for anyone who's passionate about gaming and about crypto.
Amazing. Again, guys, that's Aavegotchi.com. And with that, this is your show host, RJ Sonia, signing off. And again, thank you, Jason, for joining us.
Thank you.